You're with Julian on the Brown Note, and why Peter Dutton is the saviour of The Voice and Anthony Albanese. So I've had quite a few pieces on The Voice, the recognition in the Constitution of indigenous rights and seeking indigenous views and so on, and how I opposed it. And the reason was very simple, and it was the same reason that I opposed, even though constitutionally this might be different, it was the same reason I opposed the same-sex marriage vote. I don't want to be given the right to vote other Australians' rights. I think that the government of the day should pass the legislation. They shouldn't put it up to a popularity contest. And the main reason here is the same exact reason for the same-sex marriage vote. To lose is unthinkable. To lose is to tell Indigenous Australians that half this country is massively racist. And to say that the racism angle doesn't come in completely ignores and whitewashes the fact that the people that opposed The Voice opposed it the day it was mentioned. Mention Indigenous rights, they opposed it. So it's got nothing to do with anything else. People are saying, we don't care, we want to know what's in it, and that was all a lie. Peter Dutton saying that, he needed more detail. But that was a lie, because when the full detail of The Voice was released, Dutton didn't even turn up to hear. What was true is that the populist right have automatically gainsaid opposition to anything that what they perceive the left is doing, exactly the same as the Republicans do in America. They just immediately oppose anything. And Dutton was... I said in the piece I did on The Voice, I said Anthony Albanese is taking such a gamble here, because the populist right have never been weaker in Australia, and they cannot acknowledge that it's their fault that the Liberals keep losing, because their entire business model is based on having this same demographic and appeasing it and feeding it. And they can't turn around and be moderate on any issue. And even though they're shown in election after election that that's losing, they keep saying it's because we weren't right-wing enough. We need to push even further, because they can't. They're in a cul-de-sac here where they cannot get out of it. They can't tell people, actually, we're going to be a bit more moderate on climate change, because their audience base won't go for it. They've created this Fox News-style audience base that's perpetually enraged, and they have to feed this monster. So if anything comes up like The Voice, they had to oppose it. And we were all gobsmacked when the replacement for Scott Morrison was Peter Dutton. It was like, could you have just not chosen the most right-wing person possible to replace Scott Morrison? It was just like bizarre. And he's sort of hewn that path to ever contracting rewards ever since. And we all knew he would oppose The Voice, but he strung it out. And I said, Albanese's taken such a risk here. If it fails, it is going to be a massive blow to Albanese. And it's also going to re-energise the populist right, who are cratering. It's like the biggest own goal you could give. So I was gobsmacked. But obviously I'm voting for it, because to lose would be unthinkable. And of course it's a possibility. Same-sex marriage passed easily in the end, but if it hadn't, this would be worse. This is less likely to pass. It will, but it's less likely to pass, and the impact's even worse than the same-sex marriage vote would be. So I don't like these populist games, but maybe Anthony Albanese is a genius, because he has certainly hung Peter Dutton out to dry here. So now Peter Dutton is opposing The Voice. All of the column inches are being eaten up by the Liberal Party's opposition to The Voice, in an era where people are voting ever more left. And the populist right keeps screaming that to win those people voting left back, you've got to be even more right-wing, whether it's on Sky News, in the Murdoch press, whether it's Susan Ley, whether it's any of the populist right harbingers of doom. They all say the same thing, which is that there's this imaginary group of voters that aren't voting Liberal because they're not right-wing enough, so they're voting left-wing more, which is the most baffling. But they're trapped. They can't get out of the hole they're in. So maybe Anthony Albanese is the best political operator in human history and did foresee this. But at the moment, Peter Dutton's doing the best job possible to promote The Voice. He has taken ownership of that no vote. And now Australia looks at Pauline Hanson and Peter Dutton in the same lifeboat, with their opposition to the voice. And that's probably done more to get it over the line. But we've just seen, after Ken White actually quit the Liberal Party, the previous Indigenous Affairs Minister, Ken White, quit the Liberal Party last week. We now have Julian Lesser, who was the, I think, the Shadow Attorney General of Australia, and the, what's his exact, he was an Indigenous Rights Minister as well. I'm scrolling so far. I've never scrolled so far. God, this is long. Oh, he hasn't left the party though. So Julian Lesser, the spokesman for Indigenous Affairs, has resigned from the Liberal Party front bench. So I guess he's no longer Attorney General, and he's moved to the back bench. Another column-eating, shattering blow to Dutton's stance, where it looks like half his party doesn't even want to be in. It's like we're back in the era of Malcolm Turnbull versus Scott Morrison and Tony Abbott and all of the populist right, where he's trying to, show a nicer climate change believing, same-sex marriage supporting version of the Liberal Party, and being shot down by this cabal of really right-wing Murdoch Press supported people. And that isn't winning with the public at all, but it might have an enormous impact on galvanising support for the voice, and I think it will. And it's not helping Dutton's stock at all. So Dutton was put in a place where he had to make a choice, but it was never a choice. He was always going to oppose it. And I guess Albanese would have always known that. So it's a very dangerous game they're playing, but I think Dutton's pushing it over the line for them. He's going to become associated with every right-wing bat in Australia now. All of the people in the Liberal Party and One Nation and UAP, the public have rejected over and over at the ballot box. Their views are going to be associated with Dutton, which is pretty much where he was when he took over from Scott Morrison. So the idea the Liberal Party is evolving into this kind of gentler Liberal Party is still being shown to be completely false. And even though I oppose having this choice, I reckon it's over the line because of Peter Dutton's opposition and the fact that even senior ministers in his own party are walking away from him, leaving him with some of the worst politicians to be associated with on the stage.